Hello, Greenlight Today family. I am so glad to be with you here again. I've been on the road, so this is the first time I've ever done a video on the road, and I must say it feels pretty strange. But I'm going to go with the flow. I'm visiting old family and friends out of town, people that I haven't seen in a while. And when you run into old friends and family and you get to listen to their life stories and where they're at, you come away, or I've come away with the questions of why um, maybe certain people's lives turn out the way that they do, not asking if they're good or bad, but why maybe some people's lives are more difficult than others. Um, I don't think we'll ever know why people make certain choices. But when I ask myself these questions, I ask them in a way that, I can learn from the question. And of course, while I'm on the road, it makes no difference. I always have a book with me. And I had ran into some people that I knew, and their life was very challenging at this time. And I was just thinking to myself, is it what does it mean? I mean, does it mean we've made bad choices, or what goes on in people's lives? And one of the books that I had brought with me is this book by John C. Maxwell. And the name of it is Sometimes You Win and Sometimes You, and it says lose, but then learn. Lose is crossed out and the word learn is on there. So it goes, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And I think that's probably a very good metaphor for what happens in our lives. So I've been reading the book, not really, I'm enjoying most of it, but not all of it. But it talked about why life is difficult for some people. And it's kind of a hard thing to face, even when we ask ourselves this question. Why is this particular moment in my life difficult, or what's going on? And there's this quote by Alex Haley that says, either you deal with what is the reality, or you could be sure that reality is going to deal with you. Pretty strong words. And the book goes on to talk about what is some of the ways that we could deal with difficult times. And it talks about one of the ways we can do is to accept responsibility. This all sounds so harsh to me, but it gave a story about this guy named, I think his name is Ted Williams, and not the baseball player Ted Williams, but this guy. He was on YouTube, and I remember seeing the YouTube video. He was homeless, and people who had driven by him as he was asking for money could listen to his voice, and he had the voice of a famous radio personality. So somebody said, I'm going to put your voice on YouTube. And sure enough, this guy got famous, and he got on YouTube and all the Tonight shows and all that jazz. And he even got on Dr. Phil's show and admitted that he was a drug addict and didn't want to deal with Dr. Phil. And so you ask yourself, well, how does this man have all this talent, but his life is so difficult? He had been a DJ, a very successful DJ, 20 years earlier, was doing very well in his life, but he didn't want to admit to his bad behavior. So he got divorced, he was drinking, he got on drugs, and he got addicted to crack cocaine. He could not get off of the addiction. And when you ask him why, I thought it was pretty interesting. He says, because lying to yourself is the hardest habit to break. That's the habit that he had to break. So even though he got a second chance at fame, he got rediscovered after being homeless, and he even got to appear on Dr. Phil's show, and he said, you know what, I don't need your help. Goes back on drugs again, and finally he realizes, I've got to make this difficult choice in my life. I have to be responsible for my life. Goes back to Dr. Phil and says, hey, give me another chance, Dr. Phil. I want to do this right. And he says at the end of it, after he realized that he was the one that was in charge of the difficult period of his life, he says, for the first time in my life, I felt free. And I think about this issue of responsibility. I tend to think of it as, doing my job or something like that. But I like the way the book brings it out, is that responsibility is personal choice and how we relate to what happens to us. And it says that sometimes people tend to do four things. They'll, one, take the victim mentality. Oh, I'm the poor victim. It wasn't my fault. And what happens when we do that, we tell our mind that we are always going to be the victim. And this is the best that we can do, is to be a victim. So the mind is never going to go beyond that for us. The second thing that people do is that they have an unrealistic viewpoint of how life works. And I know sometimes I get into that trap because I say to myself, well, I'm being fair. I'm doing the right thing. Surely other people would do that, or surely everybody has the same definition of fairness as I do. That's being unrealistic. I find that my life is so much more joyful when I just accept people where they're at. Another thing is, and I love this term, it's called blame storming. We just roll the blame on to whoever, whatever's in the way. And I love that term, blame storming. I was driving my car so fast because I needed to get to work on time. Or I was on my way to the doctor's office and I got rear-ended because something was wrong with my car that I didn't know about from 6 months ago. Just anything that you can blame. And it's called the blame storming effect. Everything gets blamed on something else. I think we've kind of all been guilty of that. And then the fourth thing is we decide that we don't want to have control over the choice in our lives. That we just let our lives, or what happens in our lives, become the answer. So, it just got me to thinking about why sometimes life can be difficult, because assuming responsibility is very hard. But I also like the point the book was making about how we can stop that. And it goes on in the next chapter, and it talks about how instead of giving up responsibility, we focus on any loss that we receive as a learning lesson. So if you're focusing on learning, you're focusing on being open, you're focusing on the ability to make change in your life. I like what they said here about this focusing on learning. What happens if you focus on learning? And it says the first thing that you do is that when you improve yourself, I love this. I got to read this quote for quote. Improving yourself is the first step in improving everything else. Once you start improving yourself and accepting the beauty of yourself and your life and your possibility, everything else is going to change. 2, improvement requires us to move out of our comfort zone. I've been taking this class, as you know, for the past 6 months on nonviolent training. And the first thing they do is put you in a zone where you're not comfortable. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm not used to this. Let me go over there. And they're like, no, you're going to stay in your non-comfort zone, because that is where you're going to grow. You're not going to grow when you're comfortable. So I could tell you that from experience. That is so true. Number 3, we have to remember that true improvement never happens with a quick fix. And I love this. It says losers don't lose because they focus on losing. They lose because they focus on just getting by. A quick fix is never going to be an improvement. It's simply going to be a delay of change. That's awesome. And then I like this. It says that improvement is a daily commitment. And the easiest way that we can do that is with this quote by Al Walker: the most important words we will ever utter are the words we say to ourselves about ourselves when we are by ourselves. And I think that really goes with the mindset that we have to make this decision that we are worth improving, that we are beyond, I think Marianne Williamson says this, we are beyond our imagination of what is possible. We have to make this choice to believe this. And I'm just going to end with this quote in the chapter. And it says, knowledge may come from study, but wisdom comes from learning and improving in the wake of your mistakes. So, I hope that you have a great day. Hopefully the next time I talk with you, I will be back home. Talk to you later. Bye.